Welcome, dear readers. You're listening to Time to Read, a Winnipeg Public Library podcast book club. We're recording today from the Millennium Library in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, which is within Treaty 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ininew, and Dakota peoples, and the National Homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. In this episode, we will be discussing The Theory of Crows by David Robertson. I'm Dennis from the Idea Mill, and it's been many years since I've been in a canoe or been close to a bear. Across the table from me is...
I'm Toby. I'm an outreach librarian based out of here at Millennium Library, and I have a theory of squirrels, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. And across the table from me is...
Hi, I'm Trevor, now from the Windsor Park Library. And before reading this novel, my personal theory of crows was that they were all jerks.
A good book can carry me away from an ever-urgent, ordinary day, yeah. So keep it down, leave me alone, close the doors and turn off the phone, 'cause all I ever really need is a little more time to read.
And you, dear readers, we wouldn't do this without you. If you've got comments about what we've read, or maybe some book suggestions, we'd love to hear it. You can find our email address and all our social media outlets by going to our website at wpl-podcast.winnipeg.ca and scrolling to the bottom of the page. Hang around till the end of the episode to enjoy our most enlightening segment, Nerd Words for Word Nerds. Before we proceed further, let's check in with the panel. What's up?
Well, I'm reading the new Ann Patchett. And it's always a treat to just hold her new book in my hand. She puts out books fairly regularly, every few years or so. I mean, she's not James Patterson, but it still feels very nice to have some new words from her to read. But I was also thinking it's a very good year for publishing, for me specifically. After the new Ann Patchett book that I'm reading, which is called Whistler, I have the new Maggie O'Farrell book to read, which is called Land. So that's next up. And then later this year, more of my favorite authors, Patrick DeWitt, Emily St. John Mandel, and Becky Chambers are all releasing books.
Ooh,
so,
wow, that is a banner year.
Yeah, very exciting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Careful listeners may have heard that I address myself as being the branch head at the Windsor Park Library. So I figured, every 100 episodes or so, I'll change locations. So this is episode 101. Mm-hmm. Next 100, I'll be the branch head at the Windsor Park branch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of author stuff, we heard recently that Colson Whitehead is coming to Winnipeg. So if you are listening in the Winnipeg area and you are also a fan of Colson Whitehead, check it out. I think it's McNally Robinson, right?
They're hosting it, but the event is actually at the Winnipeg Art Gallery.
Oh, right. Okay. So yeah, two good things. You can go check out the WAG as well. And Dungeon Crawler Carl, which if you listened to our last episode, I declared my favorite book of all time. It's becoming a streaming series or TV series on Peacock. So that's really cool. Seth MacFarlane is attached to it. Mm-hmm. I think Peacock is exclusively American, so if it's streaming, it's probably going to be on something else here in Canada. Keep an eye out. I'm really curious how that one goes.
I feel like there's a lot of ways it could go really right and a lot of ways it could go really wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I'm encouraged by the fact that the audiobook and, the different audiobook versions went really, really well, including the full cast recording. Mm-hmm. So just crossing fingers that they do a good job of it. I
try not to stress too much when there's an adaptation because I feel like, well, at least there's always the book experience you can go back to. But yeah, it is so much more gratifying when an adaptation gets it right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I almost forgot about this, but we got an email about our 100th episode.
Oh, yeah, from Casper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was good. They were just happy that their book was actually featured and talked about. That was the book on Kiosk.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So glad you enjoyed it, Casper.
Thanks, Casper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and thanks for the suggestion. We appreciated all of the suggestions that we got and used all of them during the episode.
Yes, but we were one short.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
There was a terrible controversy. Apparently, we were very, very careful, we thought. But there were only 99 books listed.
Yes, but I added an extra book to the book list that you can find on our website. And so now you can play a fun game of which book on the book list was not mentioned on the podcast.
Yeah, although I'm just realizing we could have put a different spin on it and said the 100th favorite book is yours.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember I copped out when we did the 50th episode, and I said, oh yeah, my favorite book is always the next book I'm about to read.
Yeah. maybe your favorite book is the one that we just read.
Good segue.
Yeah, we'll see. So before we get into the book, Toby is going to tell us about the author. And then after that, Trevor is going to give us a summary of the book.
Okay. David A. Robertson, not to be confused with David Robertson, the baseball player. This David Robertson was born January 12th, 1977 in Brandon, Manitoba. His father, Donald, was Swampy Cree and grew up on a trapline in northern Manitoba and was sent to a day school where he was forbidden from speaking Cree. When Robertson was 3, his dad became superintendent of the Manitoba Indian Education Board and the family relocated to Winnipeg. Robertson was raised in River Heights. He was not raised with a Cree identity, and when his parents separated, he became further alienated from this part of himself. His publication history is a bit murky, but it seems like his first published work was Stone, which is a graphic novel from the now 4-book 7 Generations series. His first novel is The Evolution of Alice, was published in 2014. He's written a lot of children's books, including 2016's When We Were Alone and 2021's On the Trapline, both of which won the Governor General's Literary Award. His middle grade fantasy, The Barren Grounds, from 2020, was named one of the best books of the year by Kirkus, NPR, and Quill and Choir. He has also written Black Water, a memoir about his relationship with his father and reclaiming his Cree identity. That was from 2020. Theory of Crows, published in 2022, and most recently, All the Little Monsters, which is about his struggles with chronic anxiety and depression, and 52 Ways to Reconcile, How to Walk with Indigenous People on the Path to Healing. Both of those were published last year. Robertson is the editorial director of Swiftwater Books, an imprint of Tundra Book Group, which prioritizes the work of Indigenous writers in children's literature. He received a Doctor of Letters from the University of Manitoba in 2023 and a Doctor of Laws from the University of Lethbridge in 2025. He is a member of Norway House Cree Nation and lives in Winnipeg with his wife and their 5 children. Mm-hmm. And he's also very handsome. So if you've never seen him before, I would recommend Googling him.
I've seen a picture of him. Yeah, he's a good-looking man.
Yeah.
I'm going to say,
I have not looked at a picture, but I will take your word for it.
Yeah. Not only is he a good-looking man, he is a good-looking writer, or his words on his page are good to look at with my eyeballs as they go from left to right.
Smooth segue.
And as my eyeballs went from left to right, I got a idea of the story, which is the Theory of Crows. Mm-hmm. I would say at the heart of the story, it's a relationship between a father and a daughter set in Winnipeg, which is always kind of fun to hear local locations and street names and things and try to picture them in your head and see how much has been changed for fiction and how much is kept truthful. And a lot of that is sort of just like little Easter eggs for fellow Winnipeggers, I'm sure. I know Miriam Taves is also someone who likes to do that. But anyway, back to the plot. So we've got Matthew, who's the father, and Holly, who's the 16-year-old daughter, short for Hallelujah. And Matthew is kind of going through this midlife crisis. He's had a history of depression and anxiety. He's kind of checked out of his life. He doesn't find work very interesting. He's kind of engaged in an emotional affair with someone at work. He isn't showing up for his family, for his wife, or for his daughter. Things aren't that great with him or with his daughter, Holly. Something happens partway through the book, a tragic event, which propels the story forward, where Matthew and Holly decide to go up north to rediscover some of their family's roots, particularly Matthew's father's childhood spots in Norway House, particularly a trap line that was very special to Matthew's father. I don't know, maybe I'm just beating around the bush. Should I say what the...
Yeah, I think it's going to come up anyway.
Partway through the story, Matthew's father dies. And he was a real anchor, a real beacon, the real patriarch to not only Matthew, but also to his granddaughter, Holly. So there's a whole section of the book deals with grief and trying to live up to one generation's expectations while still being there for the next generation. There's a lot mentioned and inferred about intergenerational trauma that comes out of the family, because I didn't mention at the top, but Matthew's family is Indigenous. His father, interestingly, was a minister, and we can talk a little bit later about how the role of Christianity and how that plays throughout the book. So towards the end of the novel, they end up north with the plan to scatter some of the grandfather's ashes on the trap line, if they can find it. And yeah, that's sort of kind of the plot, I would say. Kind of maybe rough. I kind of approach it from the side and the back, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a good summary.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay, so how'd you guys find it?
Well, I chose this book because David Robertson, a very prolific local author who I was ashamed that I had never read anything by him. I've read some of his like children's picture books, but not any of his novels. So I thought June would be a good time to read one, being National Indigenous Peoples Day and month. And I enjoyed it. I think it's competently written. You know, I can see his history with writing for young adults. You know, there's kind of that like angst and the drama and the conflicts within the parent-child relationship. I liked it. I felt it was a little slow. I think it took a while to get going. I did like when they finally got to the trap line, but that's like 3/4 of the way through maybe. I like the depiction of mental health a lot. You know, I assume David Robertson pulled that from his own life because he's been very open about his own personal struggles with anxiety and depression. I liked it.
Yeah, this is my first David Robertson book, but it was obvious to me that this was not David Robertson's first book because, again, his years of writing for young adult and graphic novels, I felt right away I was in the hands of a author that could really craft characters, and I felt specifically talked to, or in the story, because of a middle-aged person who is married and has a teenage daughter and who has a history of depression. A lot of it was very specific, and yet at the same time, I felt like the themes in this novel were a little more universal, that people could relate to different parts of the story because we all have families, we all are in relationships, we all struggle with living up to who we think we should be versus who we actually are. Some of the scenes I felt were very raw. You could, like Toby, like you said, I really could tell he was writing from experience. The whole sort of numbness that one feels when they're dealing with the initial stages of grief, especially the scenes of going to the funeral home and all those kinds of things, really, really hit hard. It, really, I felt like touching a nerve through a lot of that. I agree with you with the pacing. It felt almost like 3/4 of the book was sort of this plotting kind of family drama where things were kind of teased or foreshadowed. And then, they hit the road trip part. And it felt like a totally different, almost like an adventure story or something. And so I'm not sure. I almost would have liked it like 3/4 the other way, like maybe the first quarter being the setup and then the last quarter being the adventure part up north, where maybe Matthew and Holly could spend more time reconnecting and bonding. And spoilers, I think they did kind of work through a lot of their issues. There's one line that Holly had that was, "Can two broken people really fix their own relationship unless they're fixed themselves?" And that was kind of like a through line throughout the story. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I would put it right up there with Eden Robinson's Trickster series, or there's a bit of magic realism to it, but just a dash, I would say. It definitely isn't surrounded by the mythology as some of the other stories are. It's definitely touched on, and we can talk about what the ending means later, maybe, about the crows. But yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
Also, my first time reading David Robertson. The slower pacing you mentioned, I thought of that a lot as a very intimate way of writing. I've often said that I like a certain style of writing. I like authors who can show more than tell, and David Robertson shows a lot, especially in the beginning, that slower paced stuff. A lot of it was just, it's like if it was done as a video or a movie or something, it would be like zoom-ins on, the eyebrows and the way the chin quivers and like stuff like that. He goes into so much little detail about how everyone's moving and talking and reacting to things that their feelings, not because he's told you, but because you can see it demonstrated before you. I love that. So I didn't mind the slower pacing at all at the beginning. It just felt very intimate, like we were right there with them, watching them, experiencing it with them. As we record this podcast, it is June 22nd. June 21st was Father's Day and National Indigenous Peoples Day. So it was a little kind of on the nose in terms of theme. There were a lot of things in this book that I really loved, and some that were a little hard. The book summary we'd read, or that I'd read out last episode, mentions that there's a tragedy partway through. And I didn't know what the tragedy was until we get to that point after he's gone and talked to his father. And you can see that his father is in poor health. the whole scene that followed that like really hit home to me because Matthew's relationship to his father reminded me a lot of my own relationship to my dad. I don't experience panic attacks the way Matthew did, but when I was stressed about stuff, when I was having a difficult time, it was always Dad I went to, and Dad was my anchor who could calm me down and help me find a path through no matter what. So I really loved that relationship that they showed. And then when they did that scene, which was just beautifully done, where Holly is in the basement and she can hear that there's a phone call, and she can hear her father saying, "What?" As soon as I heard that, it's like, I know what it is, because I've received exactly that phone call. And I reacted exactly the same way. When I got the call that my dad had died a couple of years ago, I was like, what? Like, what? And my wife was working from home, and she was in the other room, and she knew right away something was wrong, and I fell to my knees, and I cried out in a way I've never cried out before. And just reading it, it was like reading about my own life in that moment there. It was so dead on. For me, it was very affecting. I don't have a daughter, though, and so the rest of it, I have to assume so. But I felt like he was very good with his eye on his characters and how they react, and it felt very authentic to me. I was a little thrown off at the beginning of their adventure because like you said, the pacing changed a bit, and some of the dialogue felt a little less grounded to me than the previous dialogue had. But that didn't last too long, and I really enjoyed the way it wrapped up as well. When they go along, there's kind of a theme of Matthew making bad choices throughout the book. And one of them is he's trying to figure out which way to go around an island, and he can go left or right, but he can't remember what his dad had told him. And he picks the wrong way, and that way has a waterfall. And they have an accident, and he nearly dies, and his daughter has to save him. It was very interesting and challenging. Wilderness survival things are sometimes a little overdone, right? But this felt very, again, realistic and like maybe something that happened he actually read about or experienced. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was very well done, very well written, and I would rank it pretty highly. It's a very solid book.
And that's our episode.
And next
time for...
Well, let's talk about the different aspects. So you had a few things that you had mentioned.
Yeah, one of the things that you're talking about, how he shows and doesn't tell, and one of the scenes I thought that just was captured that in a nutshell was, when Matthew comes downstairs and catches Holly with her boyfriend, Christian, and kicks him out, and she's so mad. She goes to her room, she closes the door, she grabs a framed picture of the two of them and throws it at the ground, but she says almost instantly she goes to the picture almost as if to save it before it hits the ground, but it's too late. There's a crack in it. So just that complicated feeling that a kid has to their parents, where they hate them but they still love them and protect them. And I just thought that again was just an interesting little visual of kind of throwing because spoilers, teenage girls are dramatic sometimes, so throwing a picture across the room, I get it, but then the fact that she went and kind of was cradling it, to me, was super interesting. Yeah, and we were talking about the images in the house, and just sort of like how they're kind of tiptoeing around each other because they know that Matthew isn't well, but they're not 100% sure like how to deal with it or how to address it or how to bring it up. Like how many times, even today with mental illness, it's how do you talk about it? What's the vocabulary? Is it okay to talk about it? So it just reminded me of a line from a U2 song, which was, "There is a silence that comes to a house where no one can sleep." And that kind of struck me with the scenes of, Matthew not coming home for supper or coming home late or missing the water polo game, but at the same time wanting to be there, wanting to show up and having that relationship with his father that he wants to have with his daughter. All the foreshadowing with the letters at the beginning of each chapter. I kept thinking, these are going to be letters that she discovers after he dies or something. So I kept getting worried that, that this is going to be something too, which is maybe something he was going to try to set up or whatever. But I don't know.
Was U2's one of the bands that's mentioned in this book, right?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of a lot of music references. Pearl Jam, Sufjan Stevens, Bon Iver.
Yeah.
I was tempted to like put together a soundtrack as I was reading it, but there were just so many, and sometimes it was like entire albums or just entire artists. Yeah. But I think that also contributed to the feeling for me that the book was a little like YA coded, you know?
There was a John K. Sampson song in there from, I think, the Winter Read album, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That was something I kind of liked too, because it seemed like the Matthew and Holly, they could connect over music when they couldn't connect over anything else. Like they had similar, I kind of like the idea that it wasn't like, oh, these darn kids with their music. Like she obviously learned her taste in music from him, and they could talk about it. I kind of think it's like me and my daughter, but it's not music, it's like baseball, that she and I can talk baseball, and it's kind of like the shorthand when there's maybe something we need to talk about or just nothing to talk about. We can kind of, that's the way in kind of thing. So that felt very real, and maybe something that David Robertson experiences in his own family, that connection to music. You know, I liked it.
There were a lot of like pop culture references too, and I got a kick out of the fact that he name-checked the board game Pente.
Right.
Which, were you familiar with that game at all?
I never played it, but I remember it's like these little black and white, like little...
Well, they're like colored, semi-translucent stones.
Right.
On a board, it's kind of like Go, except you're trying to make 5 in a row. Because I have that board game in my basement in a closet right now. I bought it and I never managed to play it with anybody because no one else was interested in it. But it feels like an obscure game, and to see it mentioned in there, maybe it's just it was popular for a brief period in time. So I feel like, you know, the same generation as the author, and other little references there too. It grounds it in a time and place.
You had mentioned the attention to detail in this book, and that's something that I had picked up on too. And, you know, there's like a scene where I think it's Matthew is washing a plate, and just how Robertson breaks down every move of that action. And I felt like it almost had this calming effect, and because Matthew and also Holly suffer from these panic attacks, I can just see how like an exercise for helping yourself through these things could be, you know, breaking things apart and into these small actions, and it felt calming to read as well.
I found it interesting that like Matthew clearly suffers depression, but it was never mentioned by name once. He talked about anxiety, talked about the panic attacks, but never actually said the word depression. Anxiety and depression are often concurrent, things that you have at the same time. Comorbid? Yeah, it seemed like that one was just something that no one said directly at any point.
I did feel like I was missing context for a while when I started reading this book. I thought, like, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he so aloof? Like, what have I missed? And it took a while for it to come out about his struggles with mental health and mental illness. But yeah, it's like, it's never explicitly, I mean, he has like the scars on his wrist. There's the scene with the razor blade, but...
Yeah. He's on medication.
Yes,
that Holly borrows.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for his anxiety,
right, that's true.
Apparently not treating the depression.
Yeah, it was like Xanax or something, was it? Or,
yeah. But the depiction of it was so bang on for depression that just seems like, that's something that hasn't been addressed. And he talks a lot about feeling empty, about feeling disconnected. Yeah,
how he's trying to fill a void that wasn't anything to do with his happiness or his... You know, it was him trying to fill something, whether it was texting with that coworker or just trying to feel normal or feel something.
Yeah.
I liked how, he held his father in such high esteem. And yet, as his own father gets older, he starts to realize his father is human as well. Like that story about his father would always beat him at cribbage or beat him at golf. And then that one time they were out golfing and he saw his dad kick the ball back onto the field or whatever, or onto the green. I thought that was great. I also love that scene, that little moment where he's with his dad in the basement and he's going through, and there's like a Rubbermaid full of the little tobacco packets, because his father, being an elder, would often go to things like, offer a prayer or a blessing and then be given a little bit of tobacco. His father always taught him, like, oh yeah, when you get this, then you're supposed to return it to the earth and say a prayer. But he had this whole Rubbermaid full of them. He's like, Dad, what's all this? He goes, sometimes you've just prayed enough or something like that. I just thought
you can only pray so often.
You can only pray so often. Yeah, I laughed out loud that line because it was just so human and so excellent.
The relationship between them and religion was also something that was a kind of a theme, especially for the early part of the book, because Matthew's father, did we get his name?
Other than Moshum?
Yeah,
they call him Moshum, but that just means like father or grandfather.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know if we ever get his.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, but he was a minister, like a Christian minister, and an elder, and neither Matthew nor Holly are believers. So there's often that discussion, well, I know you believe this, Dad, but I don't, I found those discussions very interesting. And also that his father was a Christian minister, but also still told him the stories, like Cree traditions and stories that were important spiritually. So it was an interesting line that they were walking there.
Especially since the daughter's name was Holly, which was short for Hallelujah as well, which feels like a very kind of a Christian thing.
There was no conflict, though. Like, there was no conflict between Christianity and, like, the indigenous spirituality, and it was never, ever a thing. These two things could just coexist,
Yeah, for them, characters in the story,
yes.
Historically,
of course,
we wouldn't describe it that way quite.
Yeah. Yes.
I thought it was telling that her boyfriend's name was Christian.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of the boyfriend, man,
there's that YA teen drama again.
Yeah.
Right. With him just not getting the hint.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this isn't about me. Wait, it is about me? No, it's not about me, right? Mm-hmm. And they spent the whole time trying to figure out if it was about him. And no, it wasn't about you, buddy.
I think she showed her a lot of, I don't know what the word is. I want to say balls. But, I think breaking up with him was a good decision for her. I pictured her as being more insecure and wanting to hold on to a relationship that wasn't necessarily serving either of them. But she made a good decision there, I think.
I mean, she was portrayed as a smart kid.
Yeah.
Stubborn and strong-minded and independent. Mm-hmm. The kind of kid you hope you have, I guess.
Except for getting drunk and running around a church in the middle of the night.
Yeah, but I mean,
guess
that's
teenagers
also,
be teenagers.
Well, yeah, but that's also because, she was having issues with her father not being there for her. And
she had just read the texts and stuff, right? She was really, or had she not read them yet?
Yeah,
she found the text
really
and it's
angry.
like, well, and she said at one point, maybe to her boyfriend, that she had done that so that her father would have to pick her up.
Right, yeah.
I really like those scenes too between Holly and the resident elder at the school, Rebecca. Mm-hmm. How she was, very hesitant to go there just because being strong and saying, "Why would I go there?" And she's always sort of seen herself as like the token Indigenous kid in the class where like a teacher will be talking about reconciliation. What do you think, Holly? And she's like, "How the hell do I know?" And so, but then when she does go, she realizes, "Oh, this person's pretty cool, and I can talk to them, and I can swear in front of them." But then she never quite gets outside the shadow of her family because doesn't the elder say, "Oh, aren't you related to, that might be where his name comes out actually, MacIver." Like his last name, he might say, "Are you, so-and-so's daughter or whatever?" "Oh, he was a mentor to me," so. Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of good interactions. The only character I felt like we didn't really get enough from was the mother.
Claire.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like the wife mother.
Oh, yeah, like Matthew's wife,
right.
Holly's mom.
Yeah, very one-dimensional.
Yeah, she got pushed into the shadow because the focus was on the father and daughter relationship, but she's holding a lot of weight there,
Yeah.
She's kind of just like a presence in the background that's nagging everyone.
Well, I mean, she's the one who should be the most offended by the texting, and I'm sure she is, but also her reaction and how her and Matthew reconcile that, if they do, is not something that we get in this book. That's hopefully something that happens going forward, because maybe Matthew's, actually gotten his head together some through this experience and he can come back to it, but we don't really get enough of, I don't know, I felt like I could have enjoyed a little more of that.
I mean, we got the history of their relationship and how they broke up for a period of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, not a lot of them a lot of her specifically in the present.
Yeah, and I thought that might have been intentional by the author because, often with somebody that's suffering from mental illness, their perception of reality may not be actual reality, and maybe there's sort of a tunnel vision where he's focusing on himself and he doesn't actually see his wife. In his mind, she's someone that lives under the same roof, but she isn't somebody who he actively is engaging with. I thought the same thing with his own mother, where so much so that when he goes to his dad's and has lunch and goes for a walk, I don't even know if the mother was mentioned during that scene. Not until later they talk about it. I kept thinking is the mother still alive? I felt like it was very focused. He was there to see his dad. He went and talked to his dad. And of course the mother is still a big part of the family and stuff. But again, that's not what Matthew's focus was.
No. And again, that feels kind of true to me too, because when I needed dad for something from myself, I would be the same thing. If I called and mom answered, it's like, hey, is dad there? Yeah. Because that was my dynamic with mom was always different than my dynamic with dad. I guess maybe it would have dragged the book in different directions if he was paying attention to those relationships more too, but kind of missed it a little bit.
I was just trying to see if I could find the father's name.
I'm thinking Charles. Was it Charles?
I mean, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Nah.
Charlie.
Oh.
Your emotion wouldn't happen to be Charlie, would it?
Oh,
Yep,
there
that's
you
him. Charles MacGyver.
Okay.
Wow, good job.
So we did get the name just once.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I do have to say that was not realistic was when they were having their adventure, how on earth did those bananas stay unsmushed? They were eating bananas 3 or 4 days into the wilderness. I'm telling you, mine goes brown from the moment I put it in my lunch bag in the morning to
Was that also after the waterfall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did they find these magical bananas?
Maybe they were green when they left.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And then they were just perfect. After taking the abuse of the canoe ride and the waterfall, then there was just perfectly ripe. But that was something that took me out a couple of times. I was like, not another banana. It was one thing if they ate one, but I feel like there were several bananas consumed, and even long past you would think they would have any fresh fruit. She whipped out another banana. That didn't bother either of you?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, no.
I missed that completely.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think I take back everything good I said about the book.
Now, if it was an apple, I get that. Apples are hardy. You go camping, you pack some apples. You never pack bananas when you go camping.
I did find their lack of panic about the situation they were in odd. Because here are two people who have, anxiety and panic attacks. And after this near-death experience, they're like, oh, well, we're just going to continue on with this trip. And we'll figure out food when it becomes an issue.
Well, I thought he made kind of clear that they were both panicked, but they were both hiding it. Or at least Matthew was hiding it as much as possible.
Well, Matthew was unconscious for a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
But that he would just be like, yeah, I almost died. I might have a concussion. Let's just keep going.
Well, because he didn't want his daughter to think that they were going to die in the woods, right?
But I mean, I think any reasonable person would be like, this really awful thing happened. Let's call it and go home.
Well, yeah, except going home was farther than going ahead.
But they didn't know what was ahead.
That is true. Yeah. Also, Matthew has a history of making poor decisions.
Fair.
Including the decision that sent them over the waterfall. And he had a head injury and a possible concussion. So
And the bear was talking to him.
Yeah. So his decision-making process was a bit off. Mm-hmm. And I felt a lot like, one of the battles that Matthew was facing is he didn't believe any of the spiritual stuff that his father had always told him. His father would be like, yeah, I went out and, a story from his past where there was a bear, and he said, I went out and I talked to the bear and I said, hey, my son's stressing out a bit about you being here. If you don't mind, could you move on? And so he's always heard these stories, but he's never really believed them. But now that his dad has died, he's trying to reconcile himself with his dad in a way, and he's trying to believe some of this stuff. Like he's telling the stories to Holly, and she's like, you don't really believe this, do you? And it's like, well, your mushroom did, So there's also part of that, like What was that book we read with the woman trying to get the ashes down to Antarctica or something like that?
Oh, migration.
Yeah, people don't always make the best decisions when they are trying to fulfill what they think of as the last wish of a person who's died.
That was all about the turns, wasn't it?
Yes, right.
Yeah. But that was an entire book, and you didn't question that one at all.
It's very true. Yeah.
I didn't like how long they spent in the Arctic water or the Antarctic water without getting hypothermia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That to me,
But that's a different book.
that's a different book.
There's a little suspension of disbelief there.
One thing that was mentioned, but not really explained in the book, that kind of speaks to what you're talking about, Dennis, is Pascal's wager. The idea that the benefit of living as if there is a God or an afterlife versus living as if there isn't. Because if you live as there is, you're living a good life. And if there's nothing when you die, well, then you haven't really lost anything except for maybe a few fun things along the way or whatever. But if you live your life as if there is no afterlife and there is one, well, then you're really screwed for all time. So a little bit was almost like with like Matthew's father. I don't believe in these things, but does it really hurt to kind of partially accept them? And maybe we can talk about the ending of the book and maybe the title of the book, because I think the two of them come hand in hand right at the end. So the book is called The Theory of Crows.
Mm-hmm.
Not a theory about crows.
No, The Theory of Crows. Mm-hmm. And it was Mosham's. It was the father's idea that even if you haven't been on the land will remember you, and you will then remember the land. And the crows who have never kind of met you will also remember you through generations, and you will know them. And then the very end of the book, there's a very dramatic scene where they scatter the father's ashes, and then they're surrounded by crows, and the crows start flying around. And they mentioned that Matthew is almost or begins to be lifted off the ground.
I didn't catch that.
But then Holly kind of grabs him and brings him back to earth.
But that's also similar to Holly's dream, which she had, where
Right.
the crows take her? The crows lift someone off the ground in her dream.
So I'm just wondering what you guys thought of that ending, if you had a theory of the theory of crows.
Both Holly and Matthew had a lot of dreams connected to what they were experiencing and processing. And there was a lot of bleed over between that and what they experienced on the trip. Yeah, that was like what you were mentioning. It's not like this was full-on magical realism, but there were these aspects to it where there were those moments that could be explained spiritually or magically. So to me, it was just kind of their personal experience of it. They were seeing it, and whether or not there were that many crows, I think at one point Matthew even talked about how certain memories, they were the way he remembered them, even if they weren't the way that they were. So for me, who's like, diehard skeptic and materialist type person, I just took that as this is how it felt in that moment, that there were crows there, and then, they were flying around or something, but it became a bigger thing in their minds because it was connected so much to what they had talked about and what was important to them, both spiritually and like memory-wise, connecting with their father.
Yeah.
So that was just, I didn't give it a deep thought.
So if I could just read this one little part towards the end. It says, soon Matthew was engulfed by the flock. All he could see was black, a void, and his heart started to pound, and his breath became short, and his feet lifted off the ground. But when he felt Holly take his hand, when he felt her hold it firmly, he wasn't afraid anymore. Which brings me to remember another thing. What was the deal with Matthew and knowing all those very specific scientific things, like the width of a hair?
I think it had to do with his anxiety, with just like focusing on the minutia.
That was my feeling too, because
kind of almost like an OCD kind of thing.
Yeah. Like the way, when, at the beginning, at first, it was a little hard to tell why are they focusing so much on these tiny details about every little thing. And then after a while, I got the feeling, this is the way he processes the world around him when he is really, really stressed and he doesn't know what to do. So instead of thinking about the bigger things that he can't do anything about or doesn't know what to do about, he's like looking at the details on the plate, and he's looking at this detail and that detail. And probably many nights when he was up and wandering around, he was reading books and just getting really interested in these obscure things that most people don't pay attention to or remember. And he's a smart guy, right? So he remembers these details and he brings them into conversation and adds them up.
I buy that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a deeper theory than that.
No, that makes sense. It's part of his coping mechanism. Like, that if a width of a hair is this so many micromillimeters or whatever, and there's so many hairs, then is his problem really all that big of a deal if it's just one of a million?
Yeah, and he spent a lot of time talking about how he felt insignificant in the universe, like one life doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And in the face of like the vastness of the universe and the vastness of history, that 1 second that he was holding hands with Holly, he counts the seconds in his lifetime.
Right, and how that 1 second means so much.
Yeah.
At that point, it kind of turns it around on itself. That that there's these moments that are super important,
that exceed their time. Yeah. So that was interesting. I enjoyed the character Matthew and the character Holly quite a lot. I don't know. I always have a soft spot for people who are really struggling like that and are really trying, but really don't know how to move forward. Totally overwhelmed by life, but he keeps trying, and he eventually seems to be moving in the right direction. I mean, you get the feeling that he's been a good father most of his time,
Yeah, like his daughter hasn't totally written him off. That's what causes all the angst.
Yeah.
I mean, she is also just a teenager, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've had so many good memories. Like there's a lot of things they talk about where, clearly he was focused on dealing with his wife and daughter in a more caring and loving way.
I do want to go back to the crows, though, because that's something I was thinking about, and particularly because we've read other titles by Indigenous authors that prominently feature crows, like the Trickster series or Bad Cree. And the crows in those books seem more malevolent. Is that? Did I say that word correctly?
Yeah.
Whereas in this book, they seem better. Like they seem like they're helpful and they're there to be of assistance.
When we had Jordan Wheeler on, when we were talking a bit about tricksters, the raven is a trickster for some cultures, but not for all. And I forget what he said about what the Cree trickster was, but I don't think it was a crow or a raven. It was a different animal.
Because in the trickster books, the crow is the trickster.
Or the raven.
Is the raven?
Yeah.
Okay. And then in Bad Cree, she's always seen crows, and they're kind of ominous. They're like an ominous presence.
Well, but in that one, they felt like an ominous presence, but they were there to protect her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she misinterpreted them at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So, and that was an interesting there, too, because I was ready to buy that they were an ominous presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in here, I guess maybe they are a bit of both, because in this scene at the end, they are taking him away.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's really ambiguous what is happening at the end if he's surrounded by blackness. And yeah, it's a bit ambiguous. Likely intentionally so.
So you guys are no help.
No.
Yeah, sorry.
Not at all.
We have no theory of crows.
That's fine. I struggled with the ending. And I wanted someone to explain it to me like as if I were a 2-year-old.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry. We can't do that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It's looking like we probably got to wrap up because I think we've talked a little longer than usual. So any final comments we want to make before we move on?
I'm glad I finally read a David A. Robertson book,
Yeah.
and that you two read it with me.
Yeah.
I'm happy to add him to my list of authors that I've read as well, and it gave me a lot to think about.
Okay, so that sounds like a 3 out of 3 recommendation from us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will say I loved his writing. I think it was easy to read and also very descriptive, and characters are great. It's a good story. It is a little slower paced. Not as much happens in this book as maybe others of the same length, but I think it's a very satisfying read. So we will move on to our next segment. Oh, actually, before we do, I just want to shout out one thing. There were several Cree words mentioned in the book and the characters used. So I want to do a little shout out to Reddit, because there's a local Reddit user named IndigiQueerBoy, who, whenever posts are coming up on almost any subject, he'll often pop in and share a Cree word about it because he's been learning the language and he's just sharing it with people. And it's lovely to see someone doing that. So in case you're listening to this, IndigiQueerBoy, keep going. We love it. Okay, so can you tell me a book I would also like?
I sure can. So my book this month is a book by Katerina Vermette. It's called Real Ones. And I've definitely recommended books by Vermette before, but I don't think I've ever recommended this specific one. It's about two Michif sisters, one who's an artist and one who's an academic, and they have to deal with the fallout when their famous artist mother is called out for her false claims of Indigenous identity. So I assume this is inspired by real-life events. We're now familiar with many artists and writers who have falsely claimed to be Indigenous, and this novel really reckons with that, but also how it has a ripple effect, not just on the person in question, but that person's relatives. And I'm recommending it here because it's also by an Indigenous Winnipeg writer. It also deals with strong family dynamics, and it's just an excellent read, as are all of her books. So that is Real Ones by Katerina Vermette.
Well, my pick for this month comes sort of directly sideways from the novel you read, in that I am picking Curse of the Viking Grave by Farley Mowat, which is a sequel to Lost in the Barrens by Farley Mowat, which was actually mentioned in the novel, because I think Matthew's father says, oh yeah, and the name of one of the Indigenous characters in there doesn't really mean anything. And so it was written by a white Scottish author about an adventure up north. And I mean, I don't know if he eventually got canceled or maybe he died before cancel culture, but as it turned out, a lot of things that Farley Mowat wrote about as fact turned out to be made up or exaggerated or untrue. Having said that, the sequel, Curse of the Viking Grave, deals with the same characters, and they go on an adventure in the north. I remember reading it in junior high and finding it very exciting. And I think because the novel mentioned Lost in the Barrens in the early part, as soon as we hit the second part, I was thinking, this is very Curse of the Viking gravy to me, and I kept thinking about it. So if you like fast-paced kind of, boys' adventure stories that take place in the north, which may or may not be accurate, I would recommend Curse of the Viking Grave, Farley Mowat.
And now I've got Viking gravy in my head as something that should maybe be on Viking fries.
Viking fries.
So maybe that's something that is Ling-a-ding-a-danger in Gimli. Viking fries with gravy.
The books that I would normally recommend are what books I've recommended in the past. So I did a little searching for something I hadn't read. And I came across Starlight by Richard Wagamese. This one, I'll just read a summary. Frank Starlight has long settled into a quiet life working his remote farm, but his contemplative existence comes to an abrupt end with the arrival of Emmy, who has committed a desperate act so that she and her child can escape a harrowing life of violence. Starlight takes in Emmy and her daughter to help them get back on their feet, and this accidental family eventually grows into a real one. But Emmy's abusive ex isn't content to just let her go. He wants revenge and is determined to hunt her down. So Richard Wagamese is a celebrated author. This book was actually incomplete at his death. And unlike many unfinished works that get published posthumously, they didn't hire someone to write the rest of it. Apparently, they went through the notes that he had written and read through his previous books and talked to people in his life. And what they did is they published the book pretty much as he had left it, aside from typos and punctuation and stuff like that. And then they just left a note at the end of the book saying how they thought that he intended to finish it, which normally might sound like, well, how good can it be if they didn't actually know how it ended and they didn't even bother to write the ending. But the reviews for it indicate that people found it really satisfying anyway. This is a follow-up to Wagamese's 2014 book, Medicine Walk, which featured the character of Frank Starlight when he was only 16 years old, but it's not a sequel. It's just like a follow-up book, so it has the same characters and locations and stuff. So you may or may not want to read Medicine Walk before reading Starlight. But it had a lot of stuff about family and getting back to the land and things like that were themes in this book as well. So you may enjoy that. And now for our most edifying segment, Nerd Words for Word Nerds, in which we introduce a word or phrase we've been thinking about and chat about it a little. Whose word would like to go first?
Decided to go with the word corvid. It was a name for a family of birds. They're diverse birds, highly intelligent. They include crows, ravens, jays, magpies, jackdaws, and nutcrackers. The Latin name is Corvidae, so anything from that family. because this was the theory of crows. And plus also I've been reading the third book in the Children of Time series, which I think the most recent one is called Children of Memory.
The third book?
Yes. I've been
You've been busy.
I've been busy. I'm in the third book, where the first one we all remember was The Uplift of Spiders. The second one had to do with octopodi. Mm-hmm. The third one has to do with corvids or crows. Okay. And so I'm getting it from both ends right now. Mm-hmm. The theory of crows from the front and the Children of Memory from behind.
Yeah.
Anyway, I found this interesting. Did you know that crows hold funerals? They often gather around a dead crow to loudly scold and investigate the area. Rather than a mourning ritual, this behavior is a communal learning opportunity to identify local threats and avoid danger in the future. And I don't know how they've proven this, but they never forget a face. Mm. Crows are incredibly intelligent and possess the ability to recognize individual human faces, remembering them for up to 2 years. I don't know how did they find one that was like 3 years? Like, I don't know that guy. I don't know how they did. If they perceive a specific person as a threat, they will sound the alarm and pass this information on to the rest of the flock. And also they've been said that they can pass things down generationally, which again lines up with the theory of crows in the book.
So apparently researchers who work with crows and do things that they might not like disguise themselves specifically because of that.
Whoa.
Like they wear full body outfits and masks so that the crows can't identify them.
Huh. So there we go. Corvid.
Yeah. Smart birds. If they lived longer, it'd be even more impressive. Like among birds, there's like corvids and parrots, but parrots live much longer lives, and so their intelligence, like they can learn more over the course of their life than a bird like a crow or a raven, for example. But extremely intelligent. They can count to 4.
Huh.
Why not 5?
Well, apparently, I was reading a thing because, it's very interesting, but in ancient cultures, there were words for 1, 2, 3, and more than that. And apparently, 4 is about the largest number that you can look at a bunch of objects sitting on the ground or on the floor or a table or something and identify them without having to actually count. But more than that, you normally have to actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, count them up. So that just seems to be a thing that many brains, including ours, kind of naturally can do. Not all animals can count to 4 either, right? But that just seems to be the thing.
I thought you could say because they have like 4 claws on their hand or something. Yeah.
No.
I feed the local wildlife, and a year or so ago, I was trying to befriend the crows, and they're like, they take a while. You have to really work for it. With a squirrel, like you give it a peanut once and then it will like come into your home and help itself. They are extremely trustworthy, but crows, they make you work for it. And I did eventually get them to come and eat off my steps. They really like cat food. But yes.
Have they ever left you gifts?
They have not, no.
Okay. So you're not really a friend. You're more like an acquaintance.
Yeah. They will accept the peanuts and cat food I left out. But
and they know your face.
Apparently, yeah. Oh. Yeah. Okay, anyway. My word this month is the word trapline, which is what it sounds like. It's a route or area where a trapper sets a series of traps, usually used to capture fur-bearing animals such as rabbits. And what I find interesting about this word specifically is that it's unique to Canada. The term originates with the fur trade. Just the act of setting up and checking a trapline enables the trapper to become very familiar with the local geography. And so trappers and traplines just get to know the land very well. And one of the entitlements that goes along with the trap territory is the right to erect a trapper's cabin, a simple shelter where the trapper can stay while moving around their territory, which is where Matthew and Holly end up at the end of the book. And I didn't know about these trappers' cabins. And David Robertson has explored traplines in a couple of other works. On the Trapline, which is a picture book illustrated by Julie Flett, which is about a boy and his grandfather visiting the grandfather's trapline. In Robertson's memoir, Blackwater, Robertson and his dad visit his dad's former trapline. And of course, in this book, we have a trapline playing a pivotal role. So pretty important for David Robertson and his family. And traplines are still very much a thing. They're now something that people register for, and there's a whole provincial document on trapping and traplines, which you can look at if you're interested. But that is my word.
Cool. I picked gloaming as my word today.
I had that written down.
That word stood out to me too.
Yeah, it appears very early in the story, and just as soon as I read it, I had to look it up because I've heard it before, but I just didn't recall. And it means twilight or dusk. According to Merriam-Webster, originally used in Scottish dialects of English, and traces back to the Old English gloam, meaning twilight, which shares an ancestor with the Old English gloan, meaning to glow. In the early 1800s, English speakers looked to Scotland again and started borrowing the now archaic verb gloam, meaning to become dusk or to grow dark. I just thought it was, in a book where he mostly was using plain language and regular vocabulary, he would toss in a few little things like this, which, were lovely little finds. So, gloaming. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have this month. Thank you for joining us, dear readers. For next month, we're going to read and discuss Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. In a remote Polish village, Janina devotes the dark winter days to studying astrology, translating the poetry of William Blake, and taking care of the summer homes of wealthy Warsaw residents. Her reputation as a crank and a recluse is amplified by her not-so-secret preference for the company of animals over humans. Then a neighbor, Bigfoot, turns up dead. Soon other bodies are discovered in increasingly strange circumstances. As suspicions mount, Janina inserts herself into the investigation, certain that she knows who done it. If only anyone would pay her mind. A deeply satisfying thriller come fairy tale, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead is a provocative exploration of the murky borderland between sanity and madness, justice and tradition, autonomy and fate. Whom do we deem sane? It asks. Who is worthy of a voice? Have comments or book suggestions for us? Send us an email. You can find all our contact info at the bottom of the page at wpl-podcast.winnipeg.ca. You can also find all our past episodes there too. If you haven't already, subscribe to Time to Read on your favorite podcasting service. Maybe leave us a review. Tell your book-loving friends about us too. And until next time, make sure you find Time to Read.
You know what they say, crows before hoes, am I right?
You're right.
Yeah, use that on the episode.
Crows before bros.
That could be the other way.
Yeah.
Not bros before crows. Because B is before C.
Or hoes before crows.
Then
Crows after hoes.
The alphabetical order thing. I'm assuming you're talking the gardening and farming implement.
In that case, I do choose hoes before crows.
No, I still choose crows.
Over hoes?
Well, yeah. How often do you use a hoe?
Never.
Yeah.
Neither of you garden, I take it?
I garden. I never use a hoe.
You never used a hoe?
No. I don't even own a hoe.
Oh. Okay. I own a hoe even though I don't garden.
Why do you own a hoe? What do you do with your hoe?
Yeah, come on now.
It sits in the corner of the shed.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I have it.
You have it if you need it.
Yeah, because I did once have a garden in the yard.
You're a hoe owner.
Yeah.
Maybe we should transfer the ownership of your hoe to me, considering I garden.
Oh, yeah.
That is an option.
Yeah. Although I don't actually want your hoe.
No.
No hoe.
Keep your hoe to yourself.
No need for a hoe.
No. You never know. Like, you use a trowel.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're always just down there, hands and knees. One day your knees will be sore and you'll be like, man, I wish I could stand and do this.
Yeah.
And you could if you had a hoe.
Is a hoe just a trowel with a long handle?
Well, it's not shaped the same as a trowel.
Yeah.
But you would use it for a lot of the same things.
I mean, I do very small scale gardening. It's just some raised beds.
If they're raised, you don't have to get down there.
Well, they're not raised that high.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's raised, so it's not on the ground level, and it took extra work to get it there, but not enough to benefit you directly.
Yes, it's true. I do have a swallowtail living in my garden right now, though, which is very exciting.
Oh.